Hi, I'm Liz Ryan, and tonight we're talking about difficult bosses. And the name of this live stream is How to Stop a Difficult Boss from Dimming Your Flame. This is the key, right? Because that's the first thing that happens when you work for a difficult boss, a toxic manager, a micromanager, or someone that really shouldn't probably be in a leadership position, but they are, and they are your boss, is that they will suck away your self esteem and hurt you professionally, hurt you energetically, make you feel bad about yourself, and hurt your career. And obviously, these are things we're not going to allow to happen. So that's the topic. What's the story with difficult bosses? How do they get that way? Why are there so many of them? How do they show up? Their challenges, their difficulty, their mistreatment, and then what do you do if you run into that? So if you have a question or an observation or something to add to the live stream conversation, put it in the chat feature and I'll talk about it if I possibly can. And I've got an agenda, so I'm going to just dive into this topic and then put your comments in the chat and we will deal with them as well. Okay, so this topic, how to deal with a difficult boss and how to work for a difficult boss without letting them dim your flame, was inspired by an email that I got just recently from a former client. And we'll call her Amy. And she said, go ahead and use my story because if I can help someone else, I'd like to. This is Amy's story recently. She's worked for the same company for 5 years. She's done very well there. She's been promoted one time since she started, and everybody likes her as far as she knows. She's considered a really good team member, a really good employee. And she keeps learning and she keeps meeting new people inside and outside of the company. So she's really on a path. Okay. So about 6 months ago, Amy decided that she wanted to move into a new job. She wanted to wait and look for an opportunity that would give her more learning opportunities in her organization. And if she found a suitable one, she wanted to apply for it and kind of keep moving up in her career. And so we strategized together about that, about her branding and what sort of role might be the next best step for her. And she felt really good about that whole thing. And then a job came up and she really focused her pitch on how do I get this hiring manager inside my organization, someone I don't know very well, to notice me and to see how I could fit into their team and really make a huge contribution. So that was the project, and she did it, and it was perfect. And she got an interview, and the interview was scheduled for just a couple of weeks from now. And then after Amy got the interview for the job she wanted inside her organization, a job she certainly had a very good chance to get. And even if she didn't get the job when she applied for it, she was going to raise her visibility and her credibility and her influence inside the organization just by applying for this job and going through the interview process. So she felt great about it. And right after the interview date and time were scheduled, she found out from her current manager that she herself, Amy, is being moved to a different team, not the team that she was applying to work for, but a different team. She didn't request this. The company decided, and she was moved under a manager who is probably the least popular, least admired, least respected manager in the entire organization. Just the manager nobody wants to work for. And she said, okay, wow, how is this going to affect my interview for this other job inside the company? I'm working for this person, this guy who has a terrible reputation. I've talked to him a few times, found him very unpleasant, but his reputation is horrible. People have quit the company because they didn't like working for this guy. Well, let me just take the bull by the horns and go talk to him and introduce myself and say, hey, I understand, I've been added to your team. I had nothing to say about it, but I'm actually applying for another job internally and I got an interview in a week. So she did. She went and talked to him and they had a really forthright conversation. And she said, they moved me in your team. Nobody asked me, but I actually applied for another job and I have an interview for that job coming up. And the manager said, yeah, no, you don't. We're going to shut that down. I'm going to shut that down. And because they moved you onto my team, they know I need help of the specific type and the specific skills that you bring. And so you're not allowed to transfer anywhere. And she said, wow, okay, because I've been in the company for 5 years And it's always been the case that your manager can't shut down your opportunity to transfer unless you're on a performance plan, which I'm not. You're allowed to transfer if you want to. And he said, yeah, we're changing that right now for you because I need you on this team. That's why the company gave you to me. Like she's just a piece of property. And so yeah, you're here and you won't be transferring. You're not having that interview. And she said, well, have you talked to the big bosses about this? Have you talked to HR? And said, don't you worry about that, Amy. You just do your job for me and everything will be fine. So she went to HR and they said, yeah, it's a special circumstance. We're really not going to let you have that interview for that other job. So she says to me, so this is what happened just on the cusp, just on the brink of getting out of the situation I'm in now, which is not horrible, but it's not ideal. They move me to a worse situation and say, you're stuck. So basically, they're daring me to quit. They're daring me. They're saying, let's see who blinks first. If you quit, you quit. We can't keep you here. But if you don't quit, you're working for this guy that nobody else wants to work for. And you can't transfer, even though you're qualified to do that. And they gave you an interview slot. So she said, so yeah, all my strategizing, all the work we did together for my internal job search is now getting redirected to my external job search because I'm not going to work for this guy. He's a bully and he's creepy and a jerk, and I don't want to work for him. So she's going to be looking outside. But this is how fast things can change in the arena of good and bad bosses. This is how fast things can change. Amy all of a sudden is finding herself forced to start a job search that she had no plans to conduct this year, but oh well, because she's working for somebody that she does not like and does not respect, who just obviously doesn't respect her. And so that's what inspired this conversation about bad bosses, because they're kind of all over the place. So let's just go through that topic a little bit. What makes someone a bad boss? Where do these bad bosses come from? Why are there so many of them seemingly around right now, such that everybody you talk to has a bad boss story or two or three or four? It wasn't always that way. Okay. It wasn't always that way. I've been in the working world for decades and it wasn't always that way. It didn't go without saying that you were going to have a bad boss. And there are some reasons for that. So let's start with talking about what a bad boss is. And then we'll get to the why. Why is it such a common phenomenon now? First one. Okay. Hey, Edgar. Wow, this is good stuff. When should I go to HR about my boss? This is great, Edgar. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get to that in a second. Thank you for that question. We'll start with that question when we get through a little bit of agenda. What constitutes a bad boss? Well, anybody who doesn't respect you or the team, doesn't support you, doesn't advocate for you, right? Who bullies you, who belittles you. These, unfortunately, are common traits of bad managers. Who micromanagers, who gets right down in your stuff when there's really no need to because you're competent. Let's just give a list. They're controlling, right? Or they could be micromanaging, telling you exactly how to do things that you actually know how to do. They could be inflexible. That's huge. If they're not flexible about how the work gets done, or not flexible when you need PTO and you've earned it, for example, or not flexible about when you have to arrive and when you have to get to work, or whether you can work at home if the work itself is flexible to that. If they're a bully, I mean, that's like the worst thing a boss can be, a bully. You are under them in the organizational hierarchy. So if they're a bully, how can you really maintain? If they're rude, if they're obnoxious, which unfortunately a lot of folks are, especially under stress, which is something we can almost plan on every boss being subjected to, being under stress, just like you will be under stress at some point on every job. A lot of people, almost everyone, when they're under stress, their worst tendencies come out. If they're rude, if they're obnoxious, if they're discriminatory, if they discriminate, right? If they have favorites and anti-favorites and scapegoats, these are attributes of bad bosses. If they are harassers, if they're someone who sexually harasses people, right? That's obviously a horrible boss. If they sow division, they can't stand for people to collaborate and work together, so they have to plant stories or keep people apart, not share information, not provide resources, right? Not provide any information or visibility about where the department is going or where the company is going. These are all things that bad bosses do. If they have no respect for your boundaries, not just your boundaries about you and your personal life, but also your life outside of work. So this is the boss that will say, "So you got to work late tonight." And you say, "I can't work late tonight. I can take care of this issue in the morning." And they'll say, "What are you doing tonight?" "Living my life. I'm living my life tonight." Don't tell them what you're doing tonight. You say, let's talk about how I can do this in the morning. Don't ever tell your boss, "Here's what I'm doing tonight. Here's what I'm doing this weekend such that I can't do this work for you." It's none of their business. And you don't want to open that door because it will be very hard to shut it once it's open. And of course, anybody who's cruel, who's just cruel and uses their power, their little administrative hierarchical power to be mean to people. This is obviously like a playground bully. And then if they're checked out, they don't care and they don't care about you and they won't advocate for employees. Like they won't get you your performance review and your increase that you're due for the last 6 months, right? Or they won't process your PTO request and you're waiting and waiting because you got to buy airline tickets. These are all bad boss qualities. So the question becomes, why are there so many bad bosses around? Well, like I said, I've been in the workforce and leading HR teams for about 40 years. And here's why. There are way more bad bosses now than there were back then. First reason is because leadership as a quality inside organizations isn't valued like it used to be. Used to be a really big thing. Leadership meetings, leadership trainings, leadership discussions, brown bag lunches, just talking about the leadership aspect of jobs, management, and supervisory jobs. I used to lead these meetings. We talk about scenarios all the time. What about this? What about that? Well, this situation, this employee wanted this. We were looking for the right answer that respected the employee's needs, right? And the company's needs, and tried to knit those two things together and come up with a solution that was really respectful and valued both sides of that equation. And that's hard to come by today. It's much less important. There's way less leadership training in organizations. And that is a huge reason why people so often have these bad boss stories. Also, the role of HR in a lot of organizations has shifted. We were open, the open door, come on in, what's going on? And we would walk around on the manufacturing floor and in the warehouse and in the sales floor and in all the offices. What's going on? What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? It's not so much anymore. HR is being pushed in a lot of places more toward the administrative and the data and all that. It's great, but that's the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. That's not the real work of HR, which is to create a healthy organization where people, the best people, want to work. Right? That's the real job of HR. Otherwise, what's the point? The administrative stuff, you can outsource that. So the role of HR and the role of leaders has shifted a lot more towards production all day long, rather than how's the team, how's everybody doing. And part of that is because the longevity of any individual team member is much less important to most organizations now. They're not trying to keep people happy. Retention was a huge topic, 80s, 90s, aughts. Retention, retention, retention. Now it's kind of like everybody's got to be ready to go because layoffs are so common. And that's the final reason that bad bosses are so much more common, because layoffs have become a tool of running a business. Like, oh, we'll just lay off 400 people and clean up the books before the quarterly earnings report. It's not seen as a bad thing to do that will have a negative effect on the remaining members or the employer brand, right? It's not valued. That stuff isn't valued. In the 90s and aughts, they used to talk about being the employer of choice. That was the term that was used. We want to be the employer of choice. People have a choice, they come and work for us. You really don't see that. I did a search on AI, as looking at the frequency of that term in stories, news stories, blog posts, articles. It's gone down by over 90%. Employer of choice, what is that? That means a great employer where people would want to be. Well, how I would care about that? So this is the reason why bad bosses, unfortunately, are everywhere. And also the final reason is that communication skills and empathetic problem solving is just not as well understood now. It's not emphasized. We don't teach it in schools, and a lot of people don't know how to do it. And they sort of manage like a bull in a china shop, as we used to say, just sort of, saying whatever, not very compassionately, not very warmly, just whatever occurs to them. And a lot of people end up very bruised, legitimately so, feeling disrespected, feeling not valued. And it's a bad boss epidemic, basically. Okay, so what do you do? What do you do if you have one of these bad bosses? How do you deal with it? Um, Problem solving. Oh, Caroline. Yes, problem solving. Gen X. So, Caroline, what would you say about that? Is problem solving not emphasized now like it was at one point, in your memory? Because that's my take, is that the compassionate, empathetic, what should we do about this issue? How do we come to a meeting of the minds? It's just not even valued. It's not much of a topic. I used to go to countless meetings, talk about, well, Sally's unhappy. Like, oh, what does Sally need? How can we work it out? Well, we don't want to violate the policy. This is what we did, for Angela and George. Oh, well, let's make sure we come up with a good solution now. Pretty much, nope, Sally, go take a hike. We're not going to solve your problem. If you don't like it, you can quit. It's very, very sad because the glue, the trust in the organization in both directions, employees to the employer and vice versa, is what makes companies real, makes them successful. Okay, so not at all. Caroline says not at all. It's not a thing. Like problem solving, collaboration, coming to the right answer. That's the fun part of HR and management, by the way, right? It's the fun part is saying we came up with a great solution for this situation and everybody, feels good about it. I mean, that's a really important thing is getting it right. But I want to get back to your question, Edgar. When should I go to HR about my boss? So this gets us to the HR part of this. Can your HR folks be trusted? Are they competent? Are they ethical? And are they brave? Because that's what it is, Edgar. And there aren't that many. And I love HR people. I am one. But there aren't an infinite number of HR folks that can do this. They have to be competent to understand what's wrong when something's really wrong, when you bring them a complaint. And they have to be competent to use the confidentiality that the job supposedly, right, reportedly has embedded in it, and to not divulge what you said about your bad boss to that boss, which has happened to way too many people that I've worked with and talked to. That's the first thing. Are they competent? The second one is, are they ethical? Are they going to understand when you say, my boss said this horrible thing to me? I can't believe that the company would allow that. And so that's why I wanted to tell you, Cheryl, in HR, and that they say, wow, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That's the only acceptable answer, right? Wow, if that happened, then that is really a huge problem. Yes, thank you. I feel hurt. And they have to be brave because they have to now carry your flag and they have to go do something. And a lot of HR people are afraid and they won't. They won't do it. If they don't actually tell your manager and rat you out and roll over on you, as my friends in the mob would say, if I had any, yeah, if they don't actually do that, then they'll just won't act at all. And that's pretty common. And then you're worried, like, is somebody going to find out that I went and talked about my boss? It's a bad situation. And I just, I wish it were different. It was different at one time, but we have to be super realistic about this stuff now because there's, your livelihood is at stake. And so that's why in a moment we're going to talk about the practical implication of this is that you always have to be ready to look somewhere else, just like Amy, to look outside the company because we cannot rely on the internal fixes. The two that are available to us, theoretically, go to HR and go up to your boss's boss, as we can't rely on those. And they both have a risk associated with them. They're both risky because they could both expose you to something worse happening, right? These folks could back up your boss. And why would they do that? Because they say, you're the troublemaker. You know why they would say you're the troublemaker when all you do is report improper behavior by a manager? Because you obviously have the gumption, you have the guts to speak up, and that could make you a troublemaker the next time something happens. Other people might flock to you, they might listen to you, right? They might join forces with you. This is the toxic, you know, juice that spreads. Look, at the reason there are bad bosses is because they're in fear. Bad bosses are people in fear. And a lot of organizations have way too much fear in them. It's in their policies and it's in the hierarchy and it's in how you get ahead, is that you don't question the status quo and you don't question the higher ups. And so there are organizations, you walk in the door, you can feel the fear. Or you go on an interview with them and you're like, no, Not unless I'm completely broke would I work here because there's way too much fear. Unfortunately, that's becoming more common now because the fear is associated with many things, but one of them is the frequency of layoffs as just a management tool, just, cut head count, and people don't want that to happen to them, so they're going to say the thing that they think they're supposed to say, managers and employees alike. And a person who is going to do that is not going to advocate for their employees, and they're not going to intervene if something happens to you that shouldn't. Sometimes even if it's unlawful, like unlawful discrimination or even a wage theft issue where you're not getting paid correctly, they just won't. This is so common. It's distressing, obviously, to say it, to notice it. My profession at HR has like fallen off a cliff, but that's the reality. All right. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do if you're running into this stuff? Okay. 5 things to do. Dealing with a toxic boss at work. First thing is you got to see it. We have a tendency to say, it's okay. I can deal with it. I'm strong. I'm hardy. I can muddle through. I love that about you, that you can put up with a lot of stuff, but it does impact you. It's not nothing. You are not made out of titanium, right? It will hurt you. It'll hurt your sleep. It'll make your jaw tense when you're trying to sleep at night. It hurts your self-esteem. It does weigh on you. Even no matter how strong and mighty you are, it takes something out of you. It can hurt your self-esteem. And your friends or your partner or your siblings or whoever you talk to is going to say, this bad boss stuff is really a real thing for you. It's a real thing in your life. It's not something just say, oh, well, Charlie, Jane, my bad boss. We can make light of it, and we do as a coping mechanism, but we have to take it seriously. So notice it when it happens. It's not you, okay? It's not you. If this is affecting you and getting into your thoughts on a regular basis, or your boss just takes it very casually to just insult people, demean people, say things about people, divulge confidences, these are all bad boss things, right? Then how long can you put up with that? And why would you? Because you're really good. And as much as it can be a pain in the neck to job hunt, sometimes Mother Nature is going to tell you, you got a job hunt. But the first thing to do is notice it, is really consciously note and say to the people around you, won't be today, won't be tomorrow, but I got to get out from under Jackson, my bad boy. I do. It's not optional. It's not going to work out. And I'm not going to just wish that it's going to get better. Right? That's the first thing to do, is to resolve that, okay, this is real. Follow up, please. Should you ever confront a difficult boss or manager? Oh, I didn't answer your first question, Edgar. Sorry. When should I go to HR? The time to go to HR, honestly, is when the bad boss is putting the company at risk. That's when the best chance that HR will do something is if the manager is putting the company at risk. Okay. If your bad boss is a bad boss and also stealing from the company, or they're a bad boss and they're also addicted to painkillers or whatever that is or they're a bad boss and they're also freaking out on the customers, then you would go to HR or potentially, or your boss's boss. Not as an aggrieved employee, although you are one legitimately, but as a person to say, hey, I'm not trying to whatever, but my boss just cursed out one of our biggest customers at a meeting, so I figured I should tell you, right? And I don't really know more about it than that, but you should ask other people. That would be the time to talk to HR or your manager. There's still some risk in it, but there's risk in, waking up in the morning. So when they're hurting not just you and your fellow coworkers, but the company as a whole, that would be the time to go to HR. Not so much, I don't like my manager, they're mean. That's a low probability of anything good happening. But your more recent question, should you ever confront a difficult boss or manager? That's a very, very good question, Edgar, and it's a little nuanced. You know where people confront bad bosses is on the loading dock, in the shipping department, and in a truck depot, and sometimes in sales roles, and in stereotypically sort of blue collar profession. They do. And for me as an HR person, it's kind of refreshing. And then you get a manager coming in. This employee called me out. employee said, I've got no right to talk to him that way. And I'm like, ooh, interesting. It's a more real environment. It's not to say they can't fire you. If it's a unionized environment, it's much harder to terminate employees, which gives people more confidence in speaking their truth. But in general, I found that those traditionally sort of, for lack of a better word, blue collar environments, people are more they are much more likely to just speak their truth than most people in office environments. We're all kind of like walking on eggshells. Don't upset the boss, right? That takes a toll on your body, as you know. Just like walking on eggshells around anybody in your life, walking on eggshells and tiptoeing around a difficult boss tends to not appease them, and it really takes it out of you. And then you're mad at yourself and you wish you would have said something. Rather than confront them and say, you can be kind of an a-hole and everybody hates you. You're not going to say that, obviously, but you can ask questions. I mean, these are also coping techniques, but they work a lot. So the boss says something nuts. They say, from now on, we're going to not respond to customer calls. They can go jump in a lake. You say, okay, so tell me your thought process there. I want to make sure that I understand how that's going to serve us, or if you think there could be any bad ramifications, bad effects if we stop returning customer calls, right? The stereotypical phrase is, help me understand that. Like I'm the one who's just is dim. I don't understand stuff. Help me understand that. And sometimes when they say it out loud the second time, then they say, yeah, no, that's not what I meant, but I'm going to think about it. Okay, good. That's one thing that you can say. So help me understand that. Or you can say, so I was surprised when you mentioned that nobody can take a sick day anymore in the department the day following a holiday, like the Super Bowl, or that's not a holiday, but Easter or whatever like that, because this is people get together with their family members and friends, and infectious diseases spread, and that surprised me, because then it seems like you want people to come back to the office with germs and stuff, and that could really have a worse effect. Then they might say, oh yeah, you're right, yeah, forget that. Questions are less threatening than saying, what were you thinking saying yada yada yada, right? I'm an HR person. I used to follow a boss back from a conference room, back from a meeting, if they were out of hand, if they were out of line in the meeting. I would follow them. Just follow them, walk with them, chit chat after the meeting, and then go into their office and sit down in their visitor chair. This is a time honored HR trick, right? And they'd say, I can't believe that Gary, is challenging me. And I said, so help me understand, what was your purpose in telling him, shut up, Gary, that's not your decision to make. Well, I just wanted him to know. I said, do you think that you saying that, shut up, Gary, it's not your decision to make, did that probably reinforce your authority, or did it make people sort of doubt you and your gravity, like why you would need to? He's obviously a lower level in the org chart than you are. Do you think that, in other words, you look like an idiot, like a fearful, insecure, non-serious person? And then they sort of get it. And they say, what should I have said? And said, you said, Gary, it's an interesting point. And this isn't the right venue, but I'd love to talk to you about that later. But hindsight's 2020. All right. So the first thing to do is notice the toxicity. I don't want you walking around thinking it's you. And one major, major, major thing that a difficult boss will do is make you think it's you, or try to make you think it's you. This is a very big objective. In their fear, in their insecurity, they'll say it's your fault. Not really. You've changed your requirements for this project 15 times. I'm trying to keep up. You've put none of it in writing. And so I just want to make sure I'm meeting your request. They don't know what they want, right? They're just in a tizzy, they're in fear. And so I want you to know it's not you. That's number one. Get it clear. You're dealing with a toxic boss and you have to make a change. You have to do something. And then the second thing is document everything. Document, just get the date, what was said, what room you were in, what was the occasion, was it a meeting, was it a private conversation, who was there, and what was said. You don't know if you're going to do anything with this information, but it helps to write it down. I know it's time consuming. You got to do it. You got to do it. Because if things should hit the fan, you want to have this. Maybe there are 6 other people documenting this stuff too, with this difficult boss. If they're really off the wall, there could be numerous people documenting it. And that documentation could come in handy. But even if you don't use it in that way, I want you to have it for yourself. that, yeah, this is real, this is going on. And these incidents are mounting, and they will mount with these kinds of bosses. And then you'll feel like, okay, I am, you know, on my path, but this stuff is not normal and it's not cool. And I can see that in this journal or this notebook that I'm keeping. The third thing is talk it over with someone. Talk it over with a living person. Just go through it. It's a reality check. You say, "Am I overreacting?" There's a Reddit subreddit, "Am I overreacting?" And very seldom do the commenters say, "Yeah, you're overreacting." A lot of times it's like, "What? You're not overreacting. This is not a cool situation." So you want to do that, not necessarily on Reddit, but with a friend, with your partner, with your sister. Talk it over and say, "Okay, so this happened at work. Help me out. Is this weird? Is it normal?" And they'll say, "Sis, that is not cool. Like, how long has your boss been doing that?" And say, "Oh, glad to hear you say that because I'm second guessing myself. And I didn't think it was normal." Okay, so that's the reality check. Talk it over, these incidents. Get it out of yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to be in your brain, like trying to decide, is it me? Is it them? Then the fourth one is you got to decide on a course of action. The course of action that is not legitimate and will not work is, I'll just stick it out. Okay, for how long? I'll just stick it out like as long as I need to. No, because it's depleting you. It's like chipping away at your confidence and your gravity and you're feeling good. And nobody has the right to do that. They don't pay you enough to do that, to have you do the job plus take abuse. If there's an X date, yes. I'm going to keep this job until my youngest graduates from kindergarten next December. And I can do it. I'm timing it out month by month, June, July, August. Okay, fine. And then what's your plan? Then I'm going to job hunt. Great. So then get the pre job search process started like October, September, October. That means what kind of job I'm going to be looking for, right? I'm going to really get my branding, my resume together, figure out what I can earn in that job, figure out what the requirements are. You've got a beautiful 6-month runway that you can use every single minute of it. And you're going to need all of that time. Develop a target employer list, right? Get your stories together. And then I can really start the active job search September, October, knowing things often slow down around the holidays. Plus, you've got your little baby graduating from kindergarten. It's going to be joyful but crazy time. Get your ducks in a row. Yes, if you have a defined X date, I'll finish school or I'll have certification in this new tool I'm learning, whatever. Not, I'll just stick it out. No, you're not a punching bag. No, stick it out without an end date. I do not approve as your career coach. I do not approve of that. Okay. Till an end date, and you know why. That's another story, right? When I got my bachelor's degree, the company had paid for the second half of it, which was very cool of them. And so I felt like I needed to stay a couple of years to have them feel like I didn't just take their tuition money and run. But I was really getting my job search ducks in a row during that entire time. A cab driver told me, get your job search ducks in a row now so you don't wait until that deadline is over and then start thinking about it. It was genius advice. Use the time that you're given, in other words. So then you're going to decide on your course of action. And that's either going to be stick it out until X, a defined date. You know why. Start job hunting right now and don't wait. Start that process. Decide what kind of job you want. Brand yourself for the job you want. Decide who your target employers are. Start figuring out how you're going to get interviews, not just through the black hole ATS portals, and tell your network all that kind of stuff. Or you can go up. You can go to HR. You can go to your boss's boss, as we spoke about. However, if you're going to do those things, either one of them, because there's a risk involved, also start job hunting. Don't even think about going to HR or your boss's boss unless you're job hunting, because then you're just completely exposed and hanging out there. And then the fourth course of action that you could decide on, a lot of people are doing this now. It's all new now this year and the last couple of years, is that they develop a 2-lane highway. One lane is they keep doing their current job and they start thinking about that job search I mentioned before. They start thinking, what am I going to do next? What kind of job do I want? What would be the next logical career step? And so on. And the other lane alongside it in parallel is they start a side business. They start a side business because developing a side business is this process that's like going to the gym. You get so much stronger because you figure out what kind of side business is it going to be. Could be coaching, consulting. If I'm coaching part time or consulting part time, what kind of coaching or consulting will I do? Will it be accounting part time? Will it be career coaching part time? Will it be some kind of consulting where I'm helping people with website copy or what? Like, what could that look like? Do some research, and email me at support@humanworkplace.com. I'll put it in the chat and I'll give you some ideas. Um, you'll start putting that plan together. What is it? And you are also job hunting, because then you're going to really, by the time you get a job or launch your business or both, you're going to be like muscles of steel. You're going to really understand how you function in this world of employment and money making and getting paid for solving problems and so on. So that's the last course of action, where the choices are: stick it out until a defined date, start job hunting right now, go up to HR or go above your manager's head, but then also start job hunting, or develop this 2-lane highway where you're keeping your job because you can't just quit, keeping the job, starting your job search, and developing a small business on the side. It might sound, oh, that's really scary. I can't do that. That's what most people think until they do it. And they say, I had no idea coaching or consulting was so organic, so like the work I've been doing anyway. I wish someone had told me. So I feel like this is part of my mission to tell people, yeah, it's exactly like what you do all the time anyway. I wish someone had told me that, because I started consulting and I was like, oh, I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to embarrass myself. It's like, you're not at all. You're actually going to surprise yourself how good you are at this and how strong you feel when you solve a problem for a person or an employer and you say, yeah, I can do this. Like, there's no magic about it, because we're told a lot of BS about coaching and consulting, like only some people are cut out to be entrepreneurs. It's so ridiculous. Okay. I take it then I probably should not mention something about my boss in a confidential survey. That is a great, great observation. Thank you. Yes, I suggest that's a little bit strategic, because sometimes entire departments, or everyone that you can trust in the department, sad but true, might not be able to trust everyone. They all get together and say, you know what? Let's just all say the same thing, so that the people that look at these survey results, the so-called confidential survey results, don't get together and start trying to figure out who's who, which one of us is which. But let's just say, yeah, we're not impressed with Gary's leadership, and I'm not sure he's in the right role. Verbatim. There is a trick though there too. I told you I'm an HR person, and one of the things HR people say is, if it's unanimous, it's not confidential, right? If it's unanimous, 12 people in the department and 12 people said Gary is the biggest horses, it's no longer confidential. But then again, at a certain point, what are they going to fire everybody in the department? So there's a lot of personal decision making there. Like, at what point do I just say, I don't care? I know I'm employable. I got my job search going. I got resumes going out there. You know what? I'm just going to tell the truth about this guy, Gary, because he's a total sadist and no one respects him. And we're actually, kind of very frustrated. The company hasn't noticed it before now, because it's extremely obvious. All you have to do is ask anybody. But anyway, that's the story. I will answer any questions that you have about bad bosses, but I want to get to the fifth and a really, really critical thing to do if you're working for someone like this. And that is self-care. Self-care, thoughtful, intentional, concentrated self-care. And I don't mean spending money. Yeah, sure. If you have the money to spend on massages and Reiki and spa days and all the other stuff that qualifies, riding a bike and going to the climbing gym and all those things, taking vacations, of course. But a lot of people don't have piles of cash sitting around like Scrooge McDuck. You can do self-care for free, for free, for free. And it takes time that we would normally give to distraction. Not that there's anything wrong with distraction, video games and scrolling and playing Sudoku and all those things, but give yourself specific self-care. What does it mean? Breathing every single day. Breathing exercises. There's millions of them online, or I could give you some real breathing exercises that people have been doing for thousands of years that truly, truly help reduce cortisol and lower your stress and help you navigate through these tough situations. Breathing, right? I got I was given a new one to me just a couple months ago, and I do this every day now, and it's humming, low humming, low humming. Monks do this, okay? It's you stimulate the vagus nerve and it calms your whole body down. You close your ears, and you hum like the lowest pitch that you can. Close your eyes. Okay, this is what you do. And you can set your timer 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minutes, and you just keep humming. When you run out of breath, you take a new breath through your nose. I'm going to show you. Breath in through your nose. Until you're out of breath. You could probably go 10 seconds or more. The vibration inside your head is crazy. And you know what else happens when you do this? I was not expecting this, but this happens. You generate when you relax 2 pitches. In other words, the actual hum pitch like and then another one like and then you're humming 2 pitches at the same time. You're making a chord with yourself and all this vibration in your head, and it feels really good and relaxing. And it really is good and relaxing. You can do it every day when you go to sleep and when you wake up for a couple minutes. It's a fantastic thing. There's a million ways to do self-care, right? Rather yoga, stretching, all kinds of stuff. People are doing Tai Chi again, millions of things, right? Lay on the floor with your legs up against the wall, right? Huge, wonderful, fantastic. Untighten your lower back, so many things. You are worth it. You are worth it. You are worth it, worth it, worth it. Nothing is more important than taking care of yourself, right? You're dealing with this evil boss. That's another stress factor. They don't have permission to mess you up and slow you down and take away your beautiful flame. They do not have permission. So you take care of yourself. It's an act of courage and rebellion and self-love. And that is what we're all growing, is that reminder that I'm worth it. I am whole and strong and amazing no matter who I work for. That person is on their path. I can't control them, but I can control how I react to them until I can sail up and out of here and they disappear in my rear view mirror. That's the story. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for being here. I'm Liz Ryan. You can follow me on LinkedIn or here on YouTube. And I do a live stream like this on the first Wednesday of every month at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And I do more live streams inside our membership community called the Career Community, and tons of other things as well around coaching and group coaching and whatever, puzzles and illustrations and all that kind of stuff, courses. So have a fantastic evening, fantastic rest of the week. And here's to you. And keep growing your amazing flame.